few seconds to drop on in. Okay, I don't know if this is going to work or not, but let's get this show on the road. I think I goofed up with my presentations this week. Oh well. Hey everybody, welcome Houdini fans. It's 3 o'clock and it is Eastern Standard Time in the United States, and that means it's time for another session of Houdini Secrets Live. My name is Chris, and I'm going to be your host for today's session. And let's see, I have somebody trying to get in contact with me immediately. All right. Not something I want to focus on right now. But anyway, so let's get this show on the road. Thank you very much for dropping in. Now, a couple weeks ago, we started talking about vellum cloth. Now, last week, it was really cool. What we did was we worked on vellum cloth, and we were able to get it to expand into the engine. And so we went through and we basically tried every one of the vellum types. There's basically about 3 or 4 vellum types of activities going on. And so what we were able to do is get them to all to commit to the UE4 engine and play in real time. All right, so that was all cool, fun, and games. We didn't really go much into the details of each of these aspects. Now there was a cloth, there was grains, there was soft bodies, there were strings. And so what we're going to do today is just do a deep dive just into cloth, because like who doesn't want their cloths to have, billowy figure walking around and, dynamic movement going on. So that's what we're going to focus on, is creating cloth today. So what we got to do is worry about, okay, what do we use this cloth for? Well, you might use it for flags, you might use it for pillowcases, either dresses, clothing, shirts, just about anything that's moving on. But the 3 things you got to consider when dealing with vellum Houdini is that how much cloth is constructed, how is the cloth constructed, and how much of it? Meaning, like, what's the weave, and what was the construction of the actual cloth itself. And then you got to understand the material qualities. There's silk, wool, denim, leather. Like, how much bends, stretch, recoil, how light is it, how bouncy is it, how stiff is it? And then you got to worry about the material cut. Are you going against the grain or with the grain, or how does it hang when it's all draped? And there's other thing you got to worry about is the topology, meaning that there are certain global presets that people think that they can create for vellum cloth, but in the long run they can't do it. And why is that? Because it has to do with the overall topology of the vellum cloth, meaning like how many vertices does it have? Ultimately, each vertex has its own mass and it has its own material behavior. So if you've got a material with lots and lots of vertices in there, then the mass and these material values are going to change. Whether if you have a real dense location of vertices or a real sparse distribution of vertices, then this is going to behave. So it's really the relative behavior on these types of materials make it dependent on how it behaves and overall how it looks and how it overall animates. So those are the things we want to consider. Okay, so let's get things going here. And so I'm going to start off by downloading a character from Mixamo and downloading an animation and then bringing it all into Houdini. Okay, with that said, let's get on to Mixamo. Now, if you haven't had a chance to log on to Mixamo, go ahead, check it out. Mixamo is a really groovy website, and it's now owned by Adobe. And what they are, they have a whole bunch of characters, and all these characters are essentially animated. So let's see. Uh, what we want here is I want to. Oh yeah, something generic. Okay, well, we want a mannequin. So let's grab the mannequin here. And yes, we want to use this character. And now we've chosen that. Now you can use any character you want, but I was looking for kind of a naked character. Why? Because we're going to put clothing on it. Now Houdini does have a naked guy that is running around, but I don't have any animation for it, and so this may not be the best way of doing things. However, I was this is what I came up with, so this is what we've got. Okay, so we've chosen which character we want. I'm going to go ahead and choose an animation. Okay, now I'm not, there are literally hundreds of animations here, so I'm not going to look through them all. I'm going to look through I want just a walk cycle. And so I'm going to have it search on walk. And so give me just a basic walk cycle. Blah, 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 happy walk. With brutal to happy walk. Walking. Standard walk. Okay, so they all look pretty good. Some of the strut walking, really good. Let's try to see strut walking. What does this look like? So this has a good distribution. This has a good arm strength, legs, and they're moving around. And so this is kind of interesting. So let's go with this strut walking. And so let's go ahead. And I'm going to make sure that the speed is 50, stride is 50, overhead, arm space. Okay, that's about good. Trim. All right, that's good. So the whole thing is 44 frames total. So we're going to have to remember that. And so we're going to have to keep this in place. And so we want him to activate in place, because if we bring this into game, then we're going to want to make sure that we get the translation happening inside of the animation node and not inside the actual animation itself. So we have 44 frames total here. I'm going to download, and I'm going to do an FBX with skin, 60 frames per second, keyframe reduction, download. No, we don't want any download. Okay, here it goes. All right, it just got, oh, there it goes, down, strut walking. All right, very good. So I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to pull this into my Houdini project. And I'm going to go to downloads, strut walking, and then I'm going to go into my Houdini project, which is TechArt EDU, Houdini Secrets, Vellum, and then we have characters, and then I have this thing called Mannequin, because I've downloaded some other test animations with this before. So I'm going to download a Mannequin, and I'm going to hit Control V and put strut walking inside of that. All right, excellent, very good. So now what we've got is I want to go into Houdini and bring this all in together. So I've got a brand new Houdini scene, and if you haven't, gone ahead and create a brand new project for this. And I've got my project here in my Vellum project, which has been going on for a while. And then I'm going to bring in my character, but I'm going to bring him in as an agent here. So I'm going to go in and go to geometry, and I'm going to go drop this in. I'm going to go mannequin. I know I probably misspelling mannequin probably incorrectly. That's kind of like how it works. But I'm going to drop this in here, and then I'm going to drop in an agent sop. All right, now we've got lots of errors here, but not to worry, because first we're going to go in here for the input. We're going to change this to an FBX, and so my FBX file, I'm going to go to Job, Characters, Mannequin, and I'm going to go Strut Walking FBX. All right, and then I'm going to make sure that oh, there he is. And so I'm going to make sure that my current clip is mixamo.com. And let's take a look how he is. Oh, wow. He's moving fast. Okay, there he is. So strutting along here. Okay, that's going to be a good animation, I think. Okay, so we want him to kind of fit within a certain range. So I want to go in and add a retime sop. Nope. I'm going to leave this as is. And current take, I want to leave that the animation. You know what? I don't want it the animation. I want this, the take. I want the take 1-0 because I want him to be at a neutral T pose. Now, the T pose is going to be the place is where I'm going to build his cloth. Notice that I want the cloth to go onto a neutral, good neutral position, and so that when the cloth becomes active or becomes live, it'll have some place to kind of settle onto, and this will be a good place for it to settle onto. And I'm going to go and drop a null down into this, and then I'm going to call this T-pose out. All right, so we've got the T-pose out here. All right, so I'm going to drop down another agent. I'm just going to duplicate this guy. And I have been getting riddled to death by nonsense callers all day. And so I'm going to drop down another agent sop, and likewise I'm going to leave him as is, but I'm going to go and choose the animation instead on this one. And so for this one, I'm going to add in a retime sop. Okay, in this retime sop, I'm going to go into the evaluation mode, and I'm going to set by fit range, and then for the output frame range, I'm going to delete this channel. Yep, and so I want it to go from 1 to 44 instead, because I know it's 44 frames long. Input frame range 1 to 44. And so, and now, let's see, hopefully this character is going to start to loop. Nope. Okay. Fit range, now loop, pre-hold, post-hold, pre-cycle, post-cycle, zigzag. Fit range, interpolation, linear. Okay. What should this be? So I'm trying to get at the loop here, but I forgot what it is. I'm trying to get the loop here. Okay, hold on a second. And let me hold on. Let me try to go and look here. So fit range, output frame range is 1 to 44. Input frame range is 1 to 44. The character should now loop, but he is not looping. Okay, fit range, let's go into pre-cycle and post-cycle. And is that going to have an impact? Yeah, there he goes. All right, so we were able to figure that one out on the fly. So he's strutting along here. And he's got on an infinite cycle here. That's exactly what we're looking for here. All right, excellent. Now I'm going to go ahead and drop down a null nose. So I'm going to call this strut out. So here we have as our character, is our T-pose, and then here we have is our animation. All right. Okay, now that we've got that going, what we have to do is we have to make a overall transition going from the T-pose into the animation. So I'm going to drop down a sequence blend. Bet you didn't even know Houdini even had a sequence blend stop. Ha ha ha. Now you know. So we've got sequence blend going into there and a sequence blend going from there. So the strut out is number 2. And so we have our sequence blend here. And now we have the okay, so we have the input blend. And so with this, we're going to have, okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to put a keyframe right on here. Input at 1 equals 0. And blah, blah, blah. Okay, so right click, keyframes, set keyframe. So it's at 0 here. And then I'm going to go all the way to 10 here. And then I'm going to keyframe this to be a value 1. So it's going to blend in between the transitions here. And it's going to take over 10 frames to do it. Keyframe, commit change. Okay. Now let's play this. Okay, so we got a nice general transition to the strut walk. Okay, now he should be going. All right. Now, remember, when we're working with Mixamo and so forth, the character that we're working with is coming in as a packed primitive. So therefore, he's only coming in as 1 point, 1 primitive, 1 vertex, and 1 packed agent. Okay, we need to change that into polygonal data. So we got that, and then I'm going to just drop in a convert sop, and that's going to convert it to polygons. And then I'm going to put one more null here, and that's going to be for my total character out. Let's make this all caps to be consistent. All right, very cool. So we've got that going. Now let's go in and create a cloth node. So I'm going to return up to the object level. And just to prevent anything from going crazy, I'm going to go ahead and save this. Save this as job, and I'm going to call this cloth demo. All right. We've got the cloth demo going. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to lay down a geometry node, and I'm going to call this one cloth, because remember, we've got 2 different animated objects. We've got the mannequin and we've got the cloth. So when we bring this into Engine, we're going to bring this in as 2 different objects, one for the object, and one for the cloth, and one for the animated characters. And so we're just going to draw some very primitive cloth here. So I'm going to go back up into here. So I'm going to go into the front view mode, and I'm going to, yeah, that's it. I want to specialize and focus in on the mannequin. So we are ready to go. So I'm going to drop into my cloth, and then I am going to, let's see. Oh yeah, there's one thing I wanted to mention here is that what if you really chose to, you could pull in a pattern to follow. If you go ahead and go into the viewport and go into the background, you can actually, from the disk, you can actually drop in a file pattern, and then you can actually go ahead and create the pattern from this background images. Now you can go into a stitching website or into a material or a sewing website, and you could download some material, some patterns and so forth, but you can put these patterns right into the background here. But we're not going to do that today. What we're going to do is we're just going to go and we're going to draw this by freehand. And so in order to get that started, we're just going to go and throw down a curve node. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to draw some PJs on here, kind of like a one-piece PJs for this. Typically, we would do an upper and a lower piece, but for general ease of purpose, we're just going to make this nice and simple. It's called a one-piece jumper PJs, kind of like kind of thing. We're going to make it billowy. We're going to make sure that it has lots of room to kind of flow around here. So let's go ahead and start with the upper chest. I'm going to go and make sure that this is turned on. And okay, I'm going to start with the closest I can to where the chest is. And I'm going to go ahead and draw some PJs. And I'm going to kind of make it pretty big. And I'm going to make it so it's got lots of flowing room. And we don't want it to be too tight. These aren't skin tight PJs, but I do want it to follow along the overall contour of my character. Okay. Okay, and then I want to go in here, right across. Well, actually, let's make them longer. What the hey? And then so right about calf level, and then I'm going to go into right about here, right in the center. So this will be lots of good hanging cloth to kind of drape right from. All right, I'm going to hit enter in order to finish up that bad boy. And then I'm going to append a mirror sop, which is going to flip the curve over onto the other side. Now, it does come so with some pretty funky shenanigans here. And it's got the tool associated with it. I'm going to make sure to turn the tool off here. But you'll see that we're not quite fitting in here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw in a fuse sop in order to try to clean up this thing. And how does this look? Okay, we're still not there yet. And I could tell because we've got gaps here. See how these two vertices are very close to each other. And did we snap into these? No, we're not. We still have two unique vertices. And if I go ahead and turn on my point counts, I see that it goes from 12 to 23 and then 13, 4. The numbers aren't right here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand on this very carefully. And did that smoothen things up? Yeah, it did. So it goes from 10, 11, 12, 13, and now it goes into 14, 15, all the way to 25. Okay, that is good enough for me. So now it is nice and snapped in, so we are good. And I want to go ahead and change the order on this, just because we noticed that, well, actually, we did notice here going from 10, 11, 12, 13, and then it bops all the way up here and then finishes counterclockwise. So what we want to do is make it finish one big old clockwise loop right around the whole thing. So I'm going to drop in my resample. And so there we go. And so I'm going to turn off the max length segment and then turn on the max number segments. And then I'm going to crank on this till we get a good decent amount. Oh, I think about 60 should be about right. I haven't used this animation or this model, but I did notice that we're getting some duplicate here nodes from the beginning and the end here. So in order to fix that, I'm going to throw in one more fuse node just to get rid of that last fuse right at the beginning there. So let me go and make sure that that's too much here. So okay, so those are actually overlapped on each other, so I'm going to return this to my defaults, but I'm going to leave this node here in case I need to come back to it. Oh, there it is. I just forgot to put on the display. Oh, it's been one of those days. So thankfully, there it goes. We have 120 nodes up in here, and so we are good. We are good to go. So what we have to do now is we want to make a planar patch out of this. So we want to make this just one big old piece of fabric. So I'm going to drop in here, drop in a planar patch. Oh, you know what? I don't want a planar patch. I want a planar patch from curves. There we go. And so here is there we go. We've got pretty good coverage on this guy overall. And so where it says the interior edge length here, this is going to control the overall edge of the fabric. Remember what I said about earlier about the topology of the cloth? Well, the number or the density of the number of points that you have inside the cloth is going to definitely influence its behavior. So this is going to be a very a strong indicator of the have a strong influence on how our cloth overall behaves. So for now, I'm going to make this somewhat higher resolution, so I'm going to double the amount of points here by putting that to 0.05 instead of 0.1, and so we have a whole bunch of points now. Actually, I think that did that more than it did more than just duplicated the number of points. I think it actually did a whole lot more. Okay, so we've got that here, and so what we want to do now is we want to create duplicates. We want a front and a back, and then we're going to stitch them all together. So I'm going to go in and change to my side view. All right, there are my points. And so I'm going to leave that right there, and I'm going to put in a transform. And so I'm going to transform it so it's barely just behind the character here. So I'm going to move that here. Oops, I didn't put on the display. So we're going to translate over here. Hello. Okay. Oh, we're doing it in the wrong direction. Here, as I thought it was X, we need to actually do it in Z. My bad. All right. So we're going to do that so it's like just barely behind the character. Okay, we got 0.16. All right, very good. I'm going to call this rear. And then I'm going to Alt-click and then drag on that and create a duplicate of it. And I'm going to call this front. And then I'm going to translate this in Z so that it's barely just in front of the guy. Okay, so that's a little bit more. Or do we have this? Can we make this? I better leave it right there. I'm not too happy about having that. So we have those two. So let's go ahead and merge those together. Make them into one piece of geometry. Okay, we've got our front and we have our back here. All right, and it is silhouetting the guy. Yeah, that should give him enough room, and it should be nice and kind of drape-like. And so we should have enough to work with. I'm going to go ahead and save this again. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to do all the vellum shenanigans with it. So we're going to go in, I'm going to append a configure vellum cloth node. That's right. Go to configure, and then look for vellum cloth. Here it is, vellum configure cloth. There we go, that's what I want. All right, and then what I'm going to do is I've got the cloth, and so I'm going to immediately put in a vellum drape. Vellum drape, there we go. And notice that it's going to get all three of the inputs there. There we go. Okay, that's what we want here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect this third, this is the collisions. Okay, when you're dealing with vellum, just as a reminder, you're dealing with three sets of geometries. The first set of geometry this is going to correspond is to the actual geometry that you're dealing with. So this is the actual geometry of the cloth. The second group of primitives that you're dealing with, or second group of are the constraints. And you'll notice that inside, okay, do we display the constraints here? Do we see them? No, okay, they're not turned on at the moment, and I forgot how to turn them on right now. But the third input is the collisions. And so since we don't have any collisions as of yet, we just have our drape, and so we should be good to go for now. So speaking of collisions, let's go ahead and bring in our collision object. All right, so I'm going to bring in a well, I thought I was going to do that, but what I'm going to do here is go to the vellum drape, and then where it says go into the vellum drape, and then where it goes into the draping, where it says weld additional seams, I'm going to turn that on and set that to be true. All right, so you'll notice now it has little tickers here for the group and the target group. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to pick vertices to go into our group. So what we want to do is we want to pick a clockwise pattern of all the parts that we want stitched together. And notice here that we can go all the way around here. And so the only parts we don't want stitched is really here, the arm and in the neck. So let's go ahead. I'm going to turn on my vertices. And then I'm going to click on the little selector tool here. Click that. And then I'm going to grab this. And then here it is. Here's a little extra. If I go Shift A and then click Shift this guy, this gets the whole string, which is really, really cool. So I'm going to Control. I'm going to shift this last node here, that last vertex there that starts right underneath the sleeve, and then I'm going to come right back, and then I'm going to go all the way over to this sleeve here, and then I'm going to Control A this one. And did it do it? I don't think so. Okay. It is use Shift A. So let's see. I want to undo that. So I'm going to, let's see. Are my nodes together? Are they consistent? Okay. Oh, here it is. We want holes here for the legs. So that's, I was wrong about that. So I'm going to go Shift A and click this here. Oops. That got all the way to that point. What? I don't want that point selected. I want to make sure that this point is selected. So I'll go Shift A, this one, and then I'm going to go all the way to the edge here. Shift A down to this one. Yeah, there it goes. It selected the whole string there. Okay, very cool. It's a very convenient function. So I'm going to go in and Shift select this area in between the crotch. And then I'm going to Shift A, the other little vertex on the other side of the crotch. Okay, so that got that whole area. And now let's go back and do the other side. So I'm going to start with this side. So Control Shift, all right, click, and then I'm going to grab Shift A up here. Okay, we've got those. All right, and then I'm going to Shift this one, and then Shift A right here. All right, very good. All right, so now it looks like we have all of these. And I want to make sure I don't have any on the back side selected because that would be bad. Although worse things could happen. So I'm going to finish things off by hitting Enter. and everything seems to be pointing towards the back, and which is a good thing. I don't see anything kind of like going crisscrossy yet, so we're all kind of like going in various other directions. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do the exact same thing, but to the back. Now notice I'm going to go in the exact same order that what I went with earlier. So I'm going to click on my selection, and then I'm going to click this first node, and then do a Shift A, click that node. All right, I'm going to shift this node, and then I'm going all the way down to this vertex. Shift A, click here. All right, now I'm going to select this one, and then Shift A, this one. All right, now let's finish the vertices on the other side. Shift A, shift that one, and then I'm going to Shift A, this node, this vertex. Okay, and now let's get the top edge, shift this one, and then Shift A across there. All right, we are good to go. I just want to do a visual check to make sure I've got everything. All right, we've got that good to go, so I'm going to hit enter. Okay, how are we looking here? Okay, it looks like all of my welds or my stitches are matching 1 to 1, and there's a good correspondence between the front and the back. All right, so we've got that. So we've got it bridging the overall character, and for the most part, we want to make sure that none of our bridges or our welds or our stitches are actually intersecting our character here. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to test this by moving forward a couple frames, and the cloth should be trying to attach itself. So I'm going to click forward a frame, and you'll see that the cloth is trying to attach to itself. Okay, but he's still moving around, and so that's not really very helpful. And so what we have to do is try to get him back into his original position. All right. So if we wanted to, we could actually go and edit this selection here, where once it's been created, you can go in and shift select to remove, and if you happen to like goof things up, you could try to move this cycle over, and that will try to like offset things if you happen to get some kind of repetition. Or if you happen to do things in reverse, then if you end up with something like this, then this reverse thing should turn it around. I don't know. I guess you just have to be really, really careful doing it the first time in order to make sure that you don't have any of that. All right. So we're going to go in and try to weld these seams even faster. So we're going to go over here into the draping, and we're going into the weld properties. And so what we're going to do is weld frame delay, and now this equals 10. Now this is actually what this says. It says the number of frames to use the soft springs before welding the points together. Okay, we want to use the soft springs only 1 frame before welding together. So we want the welding to happen almost immediately. So I'm going to change this to 1. All right, so maybe this will help the welding of the thing a little bit faster. Okay, very good. All right, so we have some overall, but let's see if we can actually move this guy. Okay, so here is So do we have any kind of collisions? Bring in the collision geometry. You know, we don't have any kind of collisions into here yet. And I may have forgotten to include this inside of my notes, which is not too cool, but I think I remember what to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in and let's go in and let's get a object merge. And then I'm going to call this T-pose. And so I'm going to go and get, remember we did a T-pose out? So I'm going to go ahead and dot dot slash mannequin. All right, I'll get the mannequin, and then I'm going to get the T-pose out. So I think I'm going to switch this eventually later, but for the now, I just want the T-pose out. And then I'm going to drop this into here. So let's go into the draping business and see if we can keep the collision object going around here. And moving this forward. Right. Did that get that? Oh, I wanted to into this object. Okay, that should maybe do things. Let's see if this works. Okay, so it's collapsing to the overall character, but we are getting so. Let's see, do I have to do this to this part here? I cannot remember. Let's see if this has an impact. So I just want this guy to stick around here. Okay, so we got the T-pose. Here we have is our constraints, our collision geometry, and we're going to pass that off into there. All right. And so, okay. And so, in order to get this to go a little faster and a little cleaner, hold a second. I want to check it to see, okay, why is this going? If I would put this here to the T-pose here, I know why it's not doing it, because we are not doing it to the proper output character. Okay, so we got to do it to here. Oh, we got to go to the character out. Okay, my bad. See, it wasn't picking up before because it wasn't technically geometry. Because look at here. Remember that right up until this point, right up into the blend here, we're still just dealing with 1 point and 1 primitive. All right, so when we converted it and put the character out, you'll notice that it's now a whole bunch of points and primitives. So that's exactly what we want here. So now if we go into the cloth and if we go into the T-pose, if I go into, change this just into the mannequin out, the whole thing, let's go into the strut out, character out. Yeah, there we go. And let's see if this does a job kind of sticking in with things. Okay, it's basically, adhering to the original frame, and so it's sticking there. So that's overall what we want. So that's actually looking pretty good. Okay, so we're doing pretty good here. All right, now one of the things is if there's too much let me see. Once we get this working here. Oh, there we go. I'm going to turn off these points here. Okay, I'm going to turn off temporarily, I'm going to go ahead and turn off my mannequin character. But inside the cloth here, he's still going to be on there. All right, good. There we have some good. I'm looking for interpenetration. Okay, it don't seem to be having any kind of interpenetration. Now I do have some kind of clumpingness going on here. But we do have the seams overall kind of cleaned up, and we don't really have gravity set up on this yet, so this is just kind of a good old approximation of it adhering to the overall body. Now, one of the points, if there was some kind of interpenetration, what could we do about that? Well, one of the things we could do is we could shrink our collision geometry. So if we go into the drape, and if we go into the where it says inflate collisions, notice here what I'm going to do here is if I grab this initial deflation and I increase it, we see our character kind of like whittle away, a little bit like Beetlejuice. Okay, so if we do this initial deflation on there, and this is going to increase, so where it says final inflation destination, initial deflation, and we're going to go to 0, so it's going to do this over 10 frames. And so that is where it's going to kind of like do the initial deflation, and then it's going to get bigger over time. So this should give it lots of room in order to weld the pieces together. Okay, so right now it's just kind of hanging on the guy. Okay, this is looking pretty good. And we don't seem to have any kind of real interpenetrations. Okay, overall, free-form clothing. Okay, very nice. Now it looks a little bit Beetlejuicy, but I think it's going to be okay. Now if there's any kind of pointy or jaggedy sections that happen, we can actually go ahead and edit some of these things in order to kind of give them a little bit more, give them a little bit of a cleanup here. So let's see if there's any kind of jaggedy business going on here. So what we could do is, like, between the merge and the vellum, like suppose we wanted to go in and smoothen this little kink out here. So notice here that we have a little kink that kind of goes in here. We wanted to relax that a little bit. So what we could do is insert a edit sop. And I'm going to drop this edit sop right into there. And then what we could do is go into this edit sop, and we're going to go from points. And I'm going to turn on my points. And let's just say I wanted to go with, turn on my selection, and I want to go to points. Okay, click that on. Click enter to go back into it. All right. All right. Okay, it's not picking up my points. Why aren't you picking up selected geometry? And we don't want primitives. We want points. Nope, we don't want. We want to definitely put that. We want to do. Oh, so let's see. is that even existing here? So if we were to click onto this, there we go. All right, so we've got that, and so I'm going to go in and translate that around a little bit. So I'm going to move that down to here, and move that across here. Oh, we've got an edit in the wrong place, but the edit should still actually be valid. So anything we go ahead and edit in here is going to be valid here. So what I'm going to do is click this off here, and then I'm going to delete this guy and click that in there. And so now this, you know, it shows a little bit of an extension on there. Oh God, look at that. That's not good. We've got too many points here. So which points are these? I don't want those points. I just want these endpoints here. So which points are these? Let's see. 528 and 511. Okay. 511 we don't want. Nope, that got rid of that. And 529, that's 523. I need glasses. All right, so that cleaned that up. All right, so we've got those 2 points there. So now that they are that, now when we go ahead and re-simulate this, and it's still a little bit too pointy. So what I'm going to do is for this edit node, I'm going to push that up just a wee bit. And then let's go ahead and see how this looks again. All right, so that got rid of the overall kink. All right, good to go. Still a little bit high. So I'm going to move that up just a wee bit, tiny bit even more. All right, let's see how this looks. Okay, so that's smoothing things out pretty good. All right, so that's one. There's a couple ways of how you can do the overall tuning. Now what we're going to have to do is tune this for behavior now. All right, so hold on a second. I know that we're going to have to move this on here. Okay, so we're not actually doing the Vellum solvi yet, but okay, so what we're going to do is tune this. Now we're going to try to tune this to be silk. And so remember what I said, that there are various parameters and they're all influenced by the number of the density of our vertices. And so mass and thickness are the first things we want to look for. And so here we are. Is it in the Vellum? Yes. If we go in here to the Vellum, one of the first parameters we see up here for the geometry, we know that we all have that here, but as far as the mass here, I'm going to change this over to set uniform, and I'm going to set this over to 0.05. Now silk is lighter and denim is heavier, so we want this to be as an overall lighter here, so we want to decrease the mass. So that's 0.5 for the mass. And then also, not only is silk light, but it's also not very thick. So here it is. I'm going to set the uniform distribution for the thickness, and I'm going to set that to 0.005. Okay, now some of the other parameters that we're going to look for is stretch and compression. Now stretch, we have stretch stiffness and compression stiffness. Now this first stiffness is the stiffness of the constraints that is stretching here. So it's going to be very, very subtle here, but we're going to have to change this to stiffness, and so we want the constraints to be a little bit lenient on this, because this is silk, and silk is pretty free flowing here. So I'm going to change this to 1 to e to the 9, and so I'm going to leave this with no scaling there. So it should be stiffness 1 times 1 e to the 9. All right. Now the compression stiffness is probably going to be even more impactful, and it's probably going to have more important. Now this controls the way that things get wrinkly. Now silk gets wrinkly really easily, so I'm going to have to change this where it says this is 12. This is 1,000 here, and I do the math in my head right now, so I'm going to move that to 1. I'm going to move this to 1,200. Okay, and the one last parameter that we want to deal with is bend. Is like, how thick does a cloth actually behave? Now this has to do with the stiffness of the constraints, or about the wrinkliness. This is actually how thick does it actually behave. And so for the stiffness here, I'm going to move this to about 0.25. And so this is still pretty, how thick? Let me make sure it goes this, like the stiffness of the bend constraints to dial in initially change factors of 10. Okay, so let's change this to maybe about 0.25 to make it a quarter as much. All right, so we want this to be actually pretty bendy because this is silk. Okay, so let's see how this overall kind of behaves. Okay, so that's pretty light and pretty bouncy. And so we're getting kind of like a good kind of free-flowing kind of behavior here. So I like it. We can always come back and change this if need be. So since we're dealing with parameter settings just for silk, I'm going to rename this vellum. I'm going to change this to silk 01. All right, and now since this is here, I'm going to change this to drape 01, or I'll call it drape silk 01. In fact, I'm going to change this to silk 1 and then drape 1. That's drap. All right. Okay, very cool. Now things are looking good, and it is looking like a pretty free-flowing, kind of like a soft outfit. So actually, things are actually looking pretty well. But there is a problem with the backside. Notice that the backside is dark. And so that's the reason for that, is because the normals are pointing in a different direction. So I'm going to go ahead and in between the rear and the merge, I'm going to stick in a reverse sop. And this reverse sop is going to kind of clean things up. And let's see how that overall works. Reverse U. Okay, there we go. Nice and consistent. All right, beauty. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to find a good freeze frame. Like, what frame does the simulation actually, does it settle at? When does it actually kind of like take a break at? So we're going to go here to the vellum drape, and then we're going to go here from load from, well, I'm going to set the freeze frame. Now this freeze frame is the time, so we want to set this to equal freeze frame. And then, so what we have is 20 here. And I don't know, it kind of looks like it still is kind of like going along here. And so where does this actually, I'll turn this off. Where does this actually seem like it really comes forward? Where do we want to start simulating at? Okay, so like right around 60 it seems like is a good place. So let's change this to 60 and set this to freeze frame. All right. And so therefore it's going to pre-calculate this and go all the way to pre-cache it to 60 frames forward. Okay, we can also save this to our to disk so that we won't ever have to actually pre-roll this again. So since we already pre-rolled at 60, it's already done. So let's go ahead and click on the save to disk. Oh, but let's give it a name. So I'm going to change this to $JOB. And I'm going to call it, drape. Yeah, sure. And then I'm going to call this, let's call this drape silk 01. Drape silk 01. Okay, bgeo.sc, click on save to disk. And then I'm going to load from disk. All right, there you go. It is like locked in place. I'm going to hit save just to prevent any catastrophes from happening. All right, so we're good. So now we're at 1, and now we should be good to go. And now we have the frozen frame. Now we're ready to actually start getting down to things. Let's go to the Vellum solver here. So I'm going to go ahead and drop down a Vellum solver. All right. Okay, now what we have here is that the collision doesn't going to come from these collision objects here. What we have to do is get the collision from the original object here. So I'm going to go ahead and move this up over into there. And so I want the collision to come from whatever is coming from the animation object here. And then I'm going to hit play. And okay, we've got some good overall movement, but it looks like it's so slinky that the drapery is kind of like sliding down his shoulders. So we're going to have to go ahead and adjust that a little bit. Okay, one of the things that we can do is go to our solver and then turn on the number of substeps. Okay, so if I put this at 5, and that means, okay, now the constraint iterations now is at 100, and so it was at we could put this in 20. So if we put this at 20, so we're still going to have 100. Whoops. So 5 times 20 is 100. So we're going to still have the same number of iterations. So that's a good place to start. Okay, so let's go ahead and give that a try. Okay, so it seems like the number of iterations there is going hold, and the drapering is kind of sticking around to his shoulders, and it's not falling off. Okay, so that's overall really good. All right, fantastic. Now, we're not dealing with any kind of ground here, and so we're not actually, his object isn't hitting the ground object, so we don't need to worry about that, but we would like to get a little bit of some wind in here. So let's see if we can find some wind. And the ground position, we don't have to worry about that. So we go forces, Okay, oh, we can have turn on some wind here. And so I'll go and change this to add just a little bit of wind, like 0.125 and now negative 0.105. Okay. So this is going to add just a little bit of realism. Okay, good. Now this is like bouncing off of his knees and bouncing off of his elbows, and his things are looking pretty good. All right, excellent. This is working better than I thought. How about them apples? Okay, so if we need to make any kind of adjustments, we could do this. And so what we could do is try to get it to feel a little bit more silk-like. So what we're going to have to do is go to the vellum drape. And we're going to have to turn off the load from disk and then this freeze from frame. And so we're going to have to go back into that. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust my vellum constraints here. And so the mass, let's see, where's my mass? There we go. I'm going to make it just a little lighter. And then the thickness, as make this just a little bit lighter as well. So move that to 0.004. My stiffness, I'm going to move to just a little less stiff. Where was the stiffness? Oh, okay. Down to the 1/8. Okay, the stiffness. And the compression stiffness is here, so we're going to adjust this to make it about 2000. And then the bend stiffness is going to be about, we're going to make that even smaller, like 0.005. We're going to make it a 1/5 of what it was. Okay, so let's go back to our drape and let's turn on our freezer frame and see how this works. All right, there we go. And we've got that hooked up, so let's go ahead and save that to disk. And then load from disk. And let's see how this plays. Oops. All right, very good. Okay, now the shoulders, it's still slipping off the shoulders just a wee bit. So I'm going to go back into my vellum solver here. And then where it says the static threshold, I'm going to increase the friction just a little bit, just to make it just be a little bit more friction-like. And so I'll click this and see, does this make it stick to the shoulders just a wee bit more? Yeah, a little bit. Not bad, so, but I'm going to go ahead and increase it. Let's go ahead and double it to see what happens. Okay, 1.6. It might be too much. Let's give it a shot. Yeah, it opens up a little bit, but overall, it's cool for cats. It's not bad. So let's leave it at that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and save this. Yes, sirree, Bob. Now, vellum is cool because vellum will allow us to give thickness to the cloth. Now, how do we do that? We add a vellum post-process. I'll click on it here. Got to add a vellum post-process. There we go. And yes, our person disappeared, but that's okay. And so we're going to leave him, and we're going to extrude by thickness, turn that to true, and then leave the thickness scale at 1. And you'll notice that our cloth has gotten thick, and you can see the actual thickness it's gone in there. If we wanted to make it super thick, we could increase this even more so, but that would make it like foam, but that's a little bit too crazy. So let's just leave that at 1. And for silk, that might even be too thick. But I don't know. So where it says subdivision loop, subdivision for the smoothness, let's go into that and make it loop. And so it really subdivided it even more so. So I don't know. We'll have to see how this works. All right, there you go. And now, so let's go ahead and clean up the geometry here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to append an attribute delete sop. And notice that we've got just a buku of attributes here, point attributes, primitive attributes, detail attributes. So a whole bunch of attributes that we really don't need. So I'm going to go in here for point attributes. I'm just going to put star and put star on all of these. Okay, and now I do want a couple of point attributes, and that is for the velocity. And if that's the case, I'm going to go with caret V. That means don't do V. I want all but V. So that's in Houdini words, that's what everyone says. So I'm going to go ahead and then delete all the groups as well. So I'm going to add a group delete. And so we're at group names. We're going to get rid of all these groups. All right, so we got that. And all right, we've got that. And so I'm going to drop in a file cache because this still takes a little bit of time to deal with. All right, we've got the file cache, and so I'm going to go into job, $job, and for the geo or the hip name, I'm going to replace this to be, let's call this cloth demo. Yeah, cloth demo / cloth demo. $FBGeo, yes. Now, do we need to actually go do the full 300? I don't think so, because this is only 44 frames, so we only need to do it for 2 cycles. So if we're going to go 2 cycles, let's see, how long will we have to loop this for? If it's going to be in place and it's going to be 2 cycles, so 1 to 44. And then go to 1 again, so 88, 87. So I'm going to delete this, and let's go with 87. Well, let's see. Let's actually test to see if this works. So will this work if this is 87 frames long? Before we write out, I want to test it. So, well, let's go ahead and test it right here. If that works, then we will have saved ourselves just a little bit of time. All right, so we're going to click on there. I'm going to click on Save to Disk. All right, so this is actually pretty quick. It's moving along. And so remember, we've got those 5 parameters of control that manipulate the overall behavior characteristics of that. We have the mass, we have the thickness, we have the stretch stiffness, and the stretch compression stiffness, and then we have the bend. When we have all 5 of those, then we can pretty much dial in the characteristics for almost all of the clothing, whatever we have. In fact, that's what I'm going to do next week is I'm going to import this into Engine, and then I'm going to demonstrate on this on the various clothing parameters. Now, Side Effects does give some kind of techniques on way of copying that over, and so I'm going to go in and test that, and so that's what we're going to go in for next week. So I'm going to turn this on here. Okay, so I did the I should have done the I should have started at frame 10 and gone over here. So that's probably what I should have done, but I'm going to leave that going for now because that basically captures it. I forgot about the damn introduction. Oh well. All right, so what if we want to try to do another clothing? You know, so we've got the silk, and the silk looks pretty comfortable, you know, especially being summer here and all. But what if we wanted to go and make it off to the what if we wanted to make it like denim, something like a little bit harder? Then so what we're going to do is grab the silk and grab the drape for those. I'm going to push these off to the side for now, and then let's see. I'm going to add a new vellum constraints. Let's see. No, that is the configure. Configure vellum cloth. All right. And then I'm going to call this denim 01. And then for the drape, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this overall because this is basically the same, but we're going to be a little different. So I'm going to copy this over here and just drag, select that, and move these 3 up into here. And I'm going to change the name to Drape Denim 01. Okay, so we've got denim, 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 and then we're going to go ahead and cook, you know, connect these outputs to the vellum solver. Okay, oops, we want this to come from here. Oh yeah, we also want this to come to there. Okay, very good. So now we have it going. So let's go ahead now and go to our denim settings. Ooh, let me go ahead and release from disk, and we turn that off. Oh, it's thinking. Okay, it's thinking. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. We've got to just wait here until Houdini finishes his thinking. We may have done too much. Uh-oh. Hopefully things didn't go too badly. I don't see it doing anything. Okay, I'm going to see if I can escape out of this. Now, are we going to deal with a Houdini crash here? It's not looking good. Nothing seems to be moving here. Oh, okay, good. We return back to normal here. Okay, very good. So we turn that off, and I'm going to reset my simulation, and then turn this off. Turn off. All right, good. Okay, so there we go. We're going to reset the simulation, and we're going to go forth again. Now, we're going to work with denim now. Okay, save. Yes, it is saved. Thank you very much. All right, so now we're going to work with denim, which is a little bit different. So, oh, what I want to do is, before I do anything, I'm going to change, well, I'm going to leave that for now. All right, so the denim here, the mass is definitely going to be a lot heavier than the silk. So I'm going to change this. Instead of 1, I'm going to change this set uniform, and I'm going to change this to 0.125. And then for the thickness, and I'm going to go to set uniform for the thickness, and we're going to leave this at 0.01. Okay, and then for the stiffness, I'm going to leave it right here at pretty stiffness at 1 times 10 to the 10th. Yeah. And then I'm going to leave the compression stiffness right at 1,000. Sounds good. And then for the bend stiffness, I'm going to make it a little bit of that because I've got 0.15. All right, we got to go from there. And to turn that off, so we have this. We got to turn off all those, so that we should be good to go. So everything should be basically the same. All right. So if we got that, then I'm going to, oh, here we got the file cache node. So I've got that. I'm going to go with, I'm going to call this cache silk 01. And then I'm going to create a duplicate on that. And then cloth demo, and I'm going to call this cloth demo denim. We've got cloth demo denim, and I'm going to change this to cloth demo denim. All right, so we've got that going. So let's go ahead and then duplicate the cache node there. All right. All right, so let's go ahead and just test this for the Vellum solver here and to see how that's going to overall work. Oh, my bad. Okay, so here we have the Venom drape. So we're going to assume that the draping is going to take 60 frames to get into place. So we're going to put the freeze frame on at 60. It's going to calculate up to 60. All right, there we go. And then we're going to save to disk. And then we're going to load from disk. All right, now we're ready to start simulating. And so I'm going to go ahead and play this. And for my silk cache, I'm going to go ahead and save to disk. Okay, now this is baking out, so we have, now we're going to have 2 to look from. We're going to have, one is silk and one is from the denim. And so we're going to have both of these working together. And I'm anxious to see how these are going to look when combined. Okay, so this is about halfway finished. We're getting there. Okay, so it's just moving along here. All right, we're almost finished here. Okay, I think it's about time that we turned off all of these points here. So I don't want to see these points anywhere, so I'm going to turn this to primitives. Yeah, that's going to turn that off. Okay, now we have the two data sets here. So let's go ahead and I'm going to move this one off to the side. And so let's maybe make about 1. And then I'm going to move this one off to the side. And I'm going to make that 1. And then let's merge these two bad boys together. Actually, they're very close. So let's move them a little bit closer together. And this one, can it move a little bit closer? Yeah, I'll leave that about there. So let's take a look at the merge. Okay, the one on the left is silk and the one on the right is denim. And let's see how they compare with each other. All right, so it definitely seems as if the one on the left is a little bit freer and a little bit flowing, a little bit finer, and the movements of the denim seem to be a little bit bulkier and a little bit larger and a little bit more, let's just say, deliberate here. All right, so we have these two bits of cloth here. All right, cool. Now, Side Effects does supply a set of cloth material standards to work from, and I'm going to go into those next week. And I'm going to present that to you, and we're going to see if we can put this in Engine, and we're going to try to compare them with each other one by one to actually see how this stuff works real life in Engine. So that is what I wanted to kind of like go over with you folks today. And let's see if, let me go ahead and move things along. All right. Okay. All right, so that's what we have to look forward to next week. Daggone it. That's what I wanted. That's not what I wanted. There we go. That's what I wanted. All right, very good. All right, so next week we're going to go back to the, we're going to take these presets that we had before, and not only for for silk and for denim, but we're going to try it for other materials as well. And so we're going to test out the whole Side Effects clothing library and see what we can find here. All right, that'll be for next week. Now, if you just happen to have a GDC pass, go ahead and check out GDC 21 and check me out on 7/21. I believe that's a Tuesday at 1:20 Pacific Standard Time. Check out Object-Oriented Python Crash Course using Houdini, and I'll be going over my Houdini crash course, my Python crash course, and I'm using Houdini as the editing software, IDE. Okay, and then let's see. If you like what you saw here today, go ahead and hit subscribe and go to, or you can subscribe here onto YouTube, or you can check me out. I'm Chris Rhoda. Check me out on Facebook and on LinkedIn, and otherwise go to Checkhart EDU, and which is also on Facebook and on LinkedIn. All right, now if you happen to be checking out the techartedu.com website, go ahead and check out the little opt-in button here. Go ahead, click that, leave your email address, and then we will send you information maybe once in a while when we get the opportunity to send information when we get around to it. All right, that's all we wanted to show for today. I will see all of you folks again next week when we go over the Vellum Cloth Library. And until then, have a great week. Arrivederci.